"Dad, don't appear in our wedding video. Your face doesn't fit the party's color palette," my son said. The words landed in my ear as light as a breath, but heavier than his mother's coffin years ago. I froze, still holding a steaming cup of coffee. A simple sentence, yet it felt like someone had erased me from my own family portrait. My son, the little boy who once clutched my hand through snowy days, now felt like a stranger. Beside him, my future daughter-in-law smiled, laying a $180,000 wedding sponsorship contract on the table, my signature crudely forged. I didn't get angry. I just nodded, pulled my gaze back, and said, "It's fine. If Dad doesn't match the tone, then let Dad adjust the lighting." They had no idea I'd uncovered hundreds of fraud cases in my life. And this time, the one being audited was my own son. If you're still here, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Every comment helps this story reach more hearts, and if it moved you, give it a like so others can find it too. My name is Leonard Hayes, 72 years old, living alone in a 2-story wood house on the outskirts of Atlanta. I used to be the chief accountant at a construction company, the person the whole system called when the books looked off. I've been retired 7 years, and since my wife Linda passed from cancer, this house has held nothing but the tick of a clock and the smell of morning drip coffee. Eric, my only son, is why I still get up every day. He's my pride, the result of a life lived honestly and frugally. I once told Linda, "We won't leave a huge estate, but we'll leave him a clean name." She laughed. "That's enough, Leo." After Linda died, I sent Eric part of my savings so he could buy his first apartment. I wanted him to start lighter than I did. He thanked me and hugged me tight. I thought that would be enough to hold us together as father and son. Then Vanessa showed up. She was beautiful, young, and spoke as if every word had been run through an Instagram filter. Vanessa taught yoga, ran a blog about elevated lifestyle and energy frequencies. The first time we met, she looked around my old house and smiled. "I love this vintage style, perfect for shooting nostalgic videos." I didn't quite get it, just nodded. But in her eyes, I didn't see respect, I saw calculation. Eric fell for her hard. After they got engaged, he started changing his clothes, his voice, even how he looked at me. He stopped calling every Sunday. When I visited, he said he was busy meeting potential partners, which turned out to be a beach pre-wedding photo shoot. I didn't blame him. I just felt distance, like the boy who once ran across the yard in baseball cleats had wandered into a world where I no longer had a door in. And today, at a downtown cafe under warm lights and soft jazz, my son dropped that line. "Dad, don't appear in our wedding video." His voice was gentle, but there wasn't a hint of pleading. I could hear my heartbeat slow, each thud squeezed tight. I looked down at the paper Vanessa set in front of me. Wedding sponsorship agreement. Guarantor, Leonard Hayes. At the bottom was my signature faked. The pen strokes shook like an old man's, but good enough to fool outsiders. I've seen thousands of forged signatures. One glance was enough. I looked up at the 2 kids, my son and the girl he believed was the love of his life. Vanessa brushed her hair back and gave a thin smile. "Don't worry, we just want everything to look perfect. The party will be live-streamed with lots of viewers. You understand, right?" I nodded and set my cup down. "Yeah, I understand. It's just that they didn't understand me. I've watched young people fall like dry leaves chasing the spotlight. They forget the brighter the light, the sharper the shadows." I went home, sat at my desk, and opened the safe. Inside were hundreds of old financial files, company papers, audit contracts, and a black folder labeled Aurora Plan. Inside was a confidential investment plan I'd built 20 years ago, a hidden asset system, enough to live on for life without anyone knowing. Quietly, I opened my laptop, uploaded a copy of the forged contract to cloud storage, then sent a short email to an old friend, Derek Lawson, a lawyer I'd worked with for years. Subject: Activate the Aurora Plan. Body: Derek, it's time to teach my son how to balance accounts with the first audit of his life. I hit send. The click sounded dry in the dark room, like the zipper on a door closing. I leaned back and looked up at the old photo on the wall, Linda and me on our wedding day, her smile glowing among lavender blooms. "Hey, Linda," I whispered, "you once said to raise our son with love, but now maybe I have to teach him with the truth." Outside the window, a Georgia rain began, light but biting cold. I watched the drops slide down the glass and thought of Vanessa's line, "Dad doesn't fit the party's palette." Maybe she was right. I don't fit their fake lights. But real light, the kind that exposes everything, was on my side. I took a last sip of coffee and opened the first file. In my notebook, I wrote one line. Today, I officially became the auditor of my own family. And when I closed the notebook, I knew tonight wasn't just the start of a financial investigation. It was the beginning of a showdown between honor and illusion. I still remember Eric at 8, skinny, curly-haired, always laughing, always holding my hand tight when crossing the street. Every night before bed, he'd ask, "Dad, can I be a hero like you someday?" I laughed. "What hero? I'm just someone who calculates carefully and never cheats." To me, that was the highest thing, staying clean in a world full of deceit. All those years, I gave everything to my son. I worked 6 days a week, rarely took vacation, just to pay for a good school and those basketball shoes he loved. I never said no if he truly needed something. Linda, my wife, kept us fed and laughing every weekend. We weren't rich, but we were peaceful. Eric grew up proud of me. I once heard him tell his friends, "My dad's a real hero. He never cheats." Back then, my heart felt light like an April breeze. I thought no matter how life changed, a father-son bond wouldn't fade. Then, like most sad stories, the change came without warning. He met Vanessa at a startup seminar. All I heard was how she inspired him and understood the modern world better than old people. The first time I met her was at a dinner where Eric wanted an official introduction. She came in like a waft of expensive perfume, white silk blouse, sparkling heels. When we shook hands, she didn't look into my eyes. She scanned the room like she was appraising the furniture. "This house could be stunning with lighter paint and some Scandinavian pieces," she said with a professional smile. I nodded politely. But inside, something felt off. After that, Eric changed. The kid who liked my old jeans and tees now wore fitted suits, a brand-name watch, and used words I'd never heard from him. Personal brand, social class, luxury energy. Vanessa called it a man's evolution. I called it losing his roots. One evening, Eric came for dinner. I made the beef stew he used to love. He took one bite and said softly, "Dad, Vanessa says I should cut fatty foods. The new lifestyle needs purity." I set my spoon down and looked at him. "Purity, huh? So you plan to filter out your memories too?" He went quiet, avoiding my eyes, and I understood maybe I taught my son to count, but not how to tell what's real from what's fake. The next month, Vanessa arranged a fancy dinner in Buckhead for both families to meet. I arrived on time in a gray coat Linda once picked. When I walked in, Vanessa's eyes flickered. She looked me up and down, then forced a smile. "Mr. Hayes, we're so glad you came, though someone should have told you tonight's dress code is formal chic," I said gently. "I thought family dinners didn't need a dress code." Throughout the meal, she talked about wedding plans, a film crew, and a pre-wedding shoot in Paris. I stayed quiet, sipping water. When I asked, "Is there a place for me at my son's wedding?" Vanessa smiled, still breezy. "Of course. You can sit in the back row where the cameras won't pan. We want the frames to look young and consistent." Eric gave an awkward smile but didn't object. I sat there, listening to silverware tap porcelain. It felt like a contract meeting, not a family dinner. That night I couldn't sleep. I went to the porch, looked up at Georgia's misty sky, and listened to the crickets. I miss Linda, and how she used to say, "Don't let the distance between you and our son get too wide. One day, when you call, he might not hear you anymore." Now the distance was so big I barely recognized my own son. The next day, I got an email from the bank confirming an update to the wedding guarantee account. I'd never signed anything like that. At the branch, staff confirmed Mr. Leonard Hayes had opened a wedding fund and transferred more than $80,000 to the event company. I asked for copies. When I saw the signature, I almost laughed. The strokes were deliberately shaky to mimic an old man. Vanessa really thought I was a senile fool. I didn't get angry. I just pulled out my phone and photographed every page. I also found payment records, money transferred to a company called More Moments LLC, beneficiary Vanessa Moore. That evening, I stopped by Eric's place with a bottle of wine to congratulate early. Vanessa opened the door, surprised but smiling. "Mr. Hayes, we're a bit busy tonight. Could we meet tomorrow?" I nodded and glanced past her. Everything was new: glass chandeliers, abstract art. On the table, I spotted an unpaid invoice. Stack. Wedding photography deposit, $22,500. I turned away and kept my voice light. "Enjoy your evening, you two." As the door closed, I took quick photos through the window gap. I couldn't tell if my hands shook from anger or pain. But I knew this wasn't just about money. It was betrayal. That night, I opened an old album. Eric on a stool in his high school cap and gown, eyes shining. I remember him saying, "Dad, I'll be as good as you, just more modern." I smiled to myself. More modern may be true, but not how I'd hoped. I took Linda's framed photo from the shelf and wiped off the dust. Her eyes were as gentle as ever. I looked for a long time and spoke softly, as if she were still beside me. "You told me to raise him with love. Now it's time to raise him with consequences." Outside, rain began, whispering on the porch roof. I knew I wouldn't sleep. Because starting tomorrow, I wouldn't be the father erased from his son's wedding anymore. I'd be the one rewriting the entire script. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. Atlanta still wore a veil of dawn, sunlight just sliding through the curtains. In the quiet kitchen, the drip coffee maker sounded like the steady heartbeat of a plan taking shape. I opened a drawer and pulled out the file stack clipped with the forged contract, transfer screenshots, and invoices with my name. Those pages were no longer proof of humiliation. They were my first lawful weapons in the counterattack. I called Derek Lawson, my old friend from countless audit battles. He's retired now in Marietta, spends most days tending orchids and blogging about elder law. He heard my voice, paused, then sighed. "Leo, I never thought you'd call me about your own son." "I didn't either," I said quietly. "But maybe we get old to learn that justice sometimes starts at home." 3 hours later, I drove to his place. A small house with a wood porch and hanging purple orchids, still the precision of a man shaped by the law. Derek made tea, not coffee, like he always does when he needs to think. I laid everything out. Contracts, invoices, and bank statements mistakenly sent to my email. Derek put on his glasses and read in silence. Noon light slipped through the curtains onto his lined face, eyes still sharp. "Vanessa's bold," he said, tapping the forged signature. "This is organized forgery. And look here, the payment terms scream financial fraud." I leaned in. "What do you mean?" She and the event planner doubled service prices to skim the difference. See here, post-production video fees listed twice, totaling nearly $60,000. Payee, a company called Shine Creative Group. I wrote the name down cold and clear. I'd seen hundreds of schemes like this, but never thought I'd investigate someone connected to my own name. Derek set the pen down and slowed his voice. "Leo, if you want to go legal, I'll help, but keep it airtight. Don't let them know you know." I nodded. "I don't want anyone in prison. I want the truth out. And if needed, I'll let them destroy themselves." We sat a moment. Wind brushed the orchids, soft but stinging. I packed the papers, thanked Derek, and drove home heavy but resolved. That night I logged into the old bank portal Eric linked to me back in college. I wouldn't intrude, but there's a feature to trace funds through a guarantee account. With a few clicks, I saw the tangled transfers leading to More Moments LLC and Shine Creative Group, totaling over $60,000, labeled Social Media Coverage Package. I wondered what wedding needs $60,000 of promotion, or rather, who's being promoted. Vanessa, with tens of thousands of followers, had turned this wedding into a personal campaign. What bothered me wasn't the show, it was the lie. I printed everything and marked anomalies. Then I called Jamie Brooks, a young accountant I mentored years ago, smart, honest, discreet. I laid it out. He said at once, "I can do it, Mr. Hayes. Send me the statements and contracts. I'll track where the money goes." 3 days later, Jamie sent a detailed report, arrows, numbers, and one name in the middle, More Lifestyle LLC. This company is registered in Florida, no staff, no real activity. "It's a shell," Jamie said. "The owner is Vanessa Moore." I went quiet. I already knew, but seeing it proven felt like a hammer to the chest. "Keep it off system, Jamie." "I understand. What's next?" "Collect more. Greed leaves footprints." I started watching, not with anger, but with the patience of a man who lived by numbers. Every time they posted about the dream wedding, I saved the images, scanning details. In one shot of Vanessa at a jewelry store, I saw a small reflection in the mirror. Diamond Partner, More Lifestyle LLC. No doubt, she was using that name to pull sponsorships under Mr. Leonard Hayes' primary benefactor. The more I learned, the more pity I felt, not for her, but for Eric. He didn't know the woman he adored was using his father's name as a tool. I emailed Derek. He replied briefly, "Stay quiet. Traps only work when prey feels safe." I did. I kept calling Eric weekly, checking in, playing the soft, slightly forgetful dad. When Vanessa cooed, "Don't worry, we've got it handled," I smiled. "Sure, I trust you." In truth, every word etched into my mind the way any old accountant logs every cent. One Friday afternoon, they invited me to dinner to revisit wedding costs. I knew what that meant. They needed more money. I agreed, bringing a neatly wrapped gift box. A small crystal vase, I lied, was an early wedding present. Vanessa beamed. "Mr. Hayes, such taste, this fits our main table concept perfectly." I smiled. "Just want to add a little, and something to your big day." She didn't know that inside the vase, nestled in felt, I'd hidden a tiny interior cam with a 10-day battery. I don't like invading privacy, but when truth is buried in the dark, sometimes you need a timely light. I set the vase in the middle of the table and watched them hold hands and talk about a radiant future. I just nodded, leaving the gentle smile Vanessa would remember. That night, as I left, Atlanta burst into a sudden rain. Streetlights smeared across wet pavement like the data streams I was about to collect. I wasn't afraid anymore. I had just one thought. Truth always finds its way home, especially when liars think they're safe. 3 days later, the Vaz cam sent the first clips. I sat in my study with the blinds half-drawn, laptop light washing over a face lined by hurt and clarity. Vanessa appeared in frame white silk robe, red wine in hand, hair in a high bun. Beside her was a thinner, younger woman, probably a close friend. The mic caught her voice clean. "You know, I just need to get married and then cash out. He won't live much longer anyway. Look at him shaking like a dead leaf in the wind." I asked myself, since when did people talk about others with such contempt? What do you think makes someone lose their humanity, greed, or disdain for those who trusted them? Write your thoughts in the comments. I promise I'll read them all. They both laughed hollow, empty, a blade slicing through memory. Then I'll sell that old house. Eric believes everything I say. Men always believe what they want to hear. I paused the video, my hand trembling slightly. Not from shock, from pain. I once believed that living decently would surround my child with decency. Now I know decency isn't enough to fend off greed. I watched again, not with a father's eyes but with an old accountant's. I parsed every line, every subtext. Her target wasn't just the wedding funds, it was my entire estate. And maybe Eric was only a tool. I opened my notebook and wrote, Day 12 video evidence confirms financial motive and marital deceit. Then I closed it, drew a deep breath, and put on my coat. Atlanta was cold that day, the wind still wet from last night's rain. I drove to the downtown branch where the guarantee account had been opened. The branch manager, Martha Williams, was someone I'd helped out of an audit mess years ago. She recognized me the moment I walked in. Mr. Hayes, long time no see. I figured once you retired you were done with everything. I gave a thin smile. So did I, until someone borrowed my name to do something wrong. That was all it took. She understood right away. I showed her the documents, statements, and the business license for More Lifestyle LLC, the shell company under Vanessa's name. Martha frowned. Well, I can temporarily freeze transactions if there's suspected fraud. But you'll need to submit a forgery affidavit for the signature. Got it right here, I said, pulling a prepared envelope from my jacket pocket. She read it, signed the acknowledgement, then said, Within the next 2 hours, all withdrawals, transfers, or card activity from this account will be blocked, and I won't disclose the reason to anyone. I nodded my thanks. Walking out of the bank, I knew I'd just pulled a thread from the perfect rug Vanessa had been weaving for months. That afternoon, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. 13 missed calls from Eric. I didn't pick up. On the 14th, I answered, keeping my voice even. Dad, what happened to the wedding account? Vanessa says everything's frozen. They're talking about suspected fraud, but you're the guarantor. I answered slowly. The bank must have seen something unusual. Don't worry, they're just following procedure. But they said they need to verify the signature. Vanessa's losing it. Did you do something? Son, I said quietly, when someone is more afraid of losing money than losing themselves, you should start asking why. Silence for a few seconds, then Eric's voice jumped. What are you implying? You can't just suspect my wife because she isn't Mom. I pressed my lips together, my eyes resting on the old wedding photo on the shelf. Linda, her gentle smile, her eyes reminding me to keep calm. I'm not implying anything, but son, one day you'll know who's really being fooled. I hung up. That night, I played the video again, this time listening only to the audio. Vanessa's voice came through clear. He won't live much longer anyway. When I heard that line, my chest tightened like I'd been punched. So to her, I was just a temporary obstacle, a name on paper waiting to be erased. I opened my laptop, extracted the clip, adjusted the volume, time-stamped it, and added notes. Then I sent everything to Derek with a short line. Hold this. We'll need it in court. A few minutes later, he called back. Leo, this is enough to sink her whole plan. What do you want me to do first? Just lock it down. Don't touch anything. The more she thinks she's winning, the easier it'll be for us to turn it. Over the next 2 days, Vanessa started making moves. She stormed into the bank, demanded to see a manager, and accused staff of stealing wedding money. Martha later emailed me that Vanessa lost her temper, called 3 places at once, even threatened lawsuits. But every transaction tied to More Lifestyle LLC stayed frozen. Eric tried to play peacemaker. He sent me a long text. Dad, Vanessa's under a lot of pressure. She just wants a perfect wedding. Please don't make this messier. You don't get it. Our generation lives by image, by brand. I'm proud my wife is famous, and you're just jealous. I read every word slowly, then closed my phone. At this point, He really did believe I was jealous one. But I wasn't angry. I just felt quiet inside like a lake after a storm. Still, but deep. I knew that, sometimes, if you want someone to see the truth, you don't shout, you let them fall on their own. I wrote in my journal, Day 15, the shell is starting to crack. No knocking needed. It'll split on its own. That night, I sat in my study under warm light pooling over the stack of papers on my desk. I walked past the file cabinet to a drawer labeled Confidential Aurora Plan. I stopped, my fingers touching the folder's edge. Inside was everything I'd prepared for 20 years' assets, bonds, real estate, all legally protected, separated from Eric's name and anyone else's. I smiled slightly. Not a proud smile, but the smile of someone who knows he still has a card he hasn't played. Outside, steady rain traced trembling streaks on the window. I stared into the dark and spoke softly as if Linda were still there, still listening. Love can change people. I used to believe that. But maybe it's only when things collapse that they learn the real lesson. I closed the door to the room, leaving the dim light washing over the Aurora Plan label. In the quiet house, the clock ticked slow and steady like a countdown to when the truth would surface. I remember clearly the day I created Aurora. It was the winter of 2003, just after Linda recovered from her first surgery. I sat by her bed, held her hand, and said, I'm setting up a separate fund in case life turns on us. It won't be on any public bank ledger. Linda smiled weakly and asked, What will you call it? Aurora, I answered. Because you said dawn always returns, no matter how long the night. That's how the Aurora Plan was born, a legal but discreet investment structure made of 3 small companies, Hayes Properties, L&R Bonds, and Sunfield Holdings. They sound as ordinary as thousands of other Georgia companies, but they're tied together by powers of attorney I control personally. For 20 years, Aurora grew quietly. Real estate appreciated, bonds yielded, dividends accumulated. Today my total assets are over $3 million, but only Derek and I know that. To everyone else, including Eric, I'm just an old man living on a pension in a wooden house. After rewatching the video and closing the Aurora Plan file, I knew it was time to activate it. Not to hide assets, but to misdirect. The next morning, I drove to my old office where a few close colleagues still work. In that small room smelling of paper and stale coffee, I logged into a secure financial system. The numbers popped up $3,212,870. I moved it all into an Aurora Safe Trust account, segregated, non-public, untraceable. The screen flashed. Transaction completed. I exhaled and smiled faintly. Now, if anyone tried to dig into my finances, all they'd see was an old man nearly out of money, just what they wanted to find. I wrote a short letter to my financial advisor, Linda Cross, a steady-voiced woman who'd worked with me during Aurora's early years. On the phone, she sounded as calm as ever. Mr. Hayes, what do you want me to do with this plan? Linda, I need you to simulate a personal bankruptcy scenario. Send notices to the 2 financial offices my son uses. Let the rumor spread that I made bad investments and lost everything. There was a brief pause on her end. Are you sure? They might really think you're broke. I chuckled softly. That's exactly what I need. Linda understood. She just said, Okay, I'll handle it today. 3 days later, the news spread faster than I expected. Vanessa heard first. An acquaintance at the bank had accidentally mentioned that Mr. Hayes just filed for bankruptcy protection of retirement assets. When I stopped by, she had just hung up, her face pale, voice tight. Dad, I heard your accounts are frozen? I set my tea down, playing a bit clumsy. Must be a system error. I'm not as sharp as I used to be. She stared at me, eyes calculating. I could see it, the confident shell was cracking. She stood, grabbed her phone, and barked into it. Cancel the invitation print. I need to review the entire budget. A few minutes later, I heard her say from the other room, "If he's really bankrupt, what's backing the event now?" I cleared my throat and said, "Well, if it's hard, scale it down. Your young happiness is what matters." Vanessa swallowed and forced a smile. "Of course, Dad. We just don't want you to get tired." But I knew what was wearing her down wasn't worry for me, it was the wedding money no longer flowing her way. That afternoon, I got a text from Eric. "Dad, Vanessa wants to postpone the party. She says she needs time to reorganize finances. Are you really in trouble?" I replied with just 3 words. "Don't worry, son." That was all, but I knew he wouldn't be at ease. That evening, Eric came over. He sat at the table looking both confused and worried. "Dad, I just want to ask straight. Are you actually bankrupt?" I looked into those eyes that once were so clear and now were tangled with doubt. "Son, in life there are things you only value after they're gone. Money's just one of them." "But Dad, if you really don't have anything, why didn't you tell me? I could help." I let out a small laugh. "How? With a wedding I don't even qualify to sit in." Eric lowered his head. The room went silent. I didn't want to hurt him, but I couldn't let him stay blindfolded either. I patted his shoulder and said softly, "Don't worry about me. I still have something more valuable than money, my memory. And sometimes, an old man's memory is worth more than everything." He looked up, eyes swirling, not understanding what I meant. I didn't explain. The next day, I sent a financial report. I drafted myself to the event company, precise, clean, and stating that the guarantor, Leonard Hayes, no longer has the financial capacity to maintain the contract. In the footnotes, I added a line: "All future payments must be confirmed from Miss Vanessa Moore's own sources." 2 hours after the email went out, I received a notice. The contract was indefinitely suspended. Vanessa called me that night, her voice shaking with anger. "What did you do? They're saying you don't have the capacity, even though you guaranteed everything." I answered calmly, "They're probably re-auditing. I used to do that job, I know the drill. When they see irregularities, they stop to verify. You should thank them for being careful." She was quiet for a few seconds, then snapped, "You know, you're ruining your son's big day." I looked out the window, rain coming, streetlights blurring on the glass. "A big day? You're mistaken. I'm not ruining anything. I'm turning on the lights to see who's sincere in the dark." She hung up without another word. A week later, the panic was real. Every vendor called demanding fresh payments, photo, flowers, dress, hotel. No one accepted guarantees under Mr. Hayes anymore. Eric called me at midnight, exhausted. "Dad, I don't get it. Everyone wants money up front and Vanessa's losing it. She says everything's falling apart because of you." I answered softly, "Maybe that's true. But sometimes, to keep a ship from hitting the rocks, you have to break the old rudder first." I heard him sigh, then the line went dead. When the house fell quiet, I opened the Aurora files again. Under the header Asset Protection, 2003, I added a new line. 2025, activated. Not for revenge, but for justice. I closed the book and looked at Linda's photo. "If you were here," I whispered, "you might say I'm too cold. But sometimes, to save a child from the cliff, a father has to let him hit bottom." Outside, a night wind rose, swirling dry leaves across the porch. I knew the storm hadn't arrived yet, but that shiny shell, it had cracked beyond repair. The news spread faster than I thought. In just 4 days, Vanessa's entire wedding machine jammed like a clock with a broken hand. The cake vendor demanded fresh payment. The photo studio canceled filming because the guarantor lost capacity. The decor company emailed to re-verify funds before proceeding. Every message carried the same note: due to changes in Mr. Leonard Hayes's financial records, all transactions must be paid directly in cash. I sat in front of the screen, sipping coffee, watching the dominoes fall, everything starting from one click of mine. No gloating, no thrill, just the quiet feeling of watching justice find its own way back. That afternoon the phone rang. Vanessa. Her voice was no longer soft. It was sharp and cold like a razor. "What did you do, huh? My whole system is paralyzed. You think I don't know? Only you have the pull to block those accounts." I paused a few seconds, then answered evenly. "I haven't done a thing, Vanessa. Maybe the bank just wants to make sure no one's exploiting the elderly to do something wrong." "You senile old man. You'll regret this. I'll make you beg for forgiveness." She screamed and hung up. I wasn't angry. I just pressed save. The call had been recorded from start to finish. Every breath, every threat now evidence. That night, Eric came by. He looked worse than ever, wrinkled shirt, sunken eyes, hoarse voice. "Dad, I need the truth. Are you trying to destroy my wedding?" I looked at him, feeling equal parts love and sadness. "No, son, I'm not destroying anything. I'm removing rusted bolts so you can see the real foundation of the house you're standing on. Dad, I'm about to get married, do you get that? Everything was ready, and now it's all falling apart because of you." I stood, walked over, and put a hand on his shoulder. "No, Eric, it's falling apart because you built it on sand." He went silent. His eyes held anger and confusion both. I knew he still believed Vanessa in the name of love or pride. I let him leave in silence. Part of me wanted to run after him, hug him, and say, "I'm sorry." But the part of me that had lived a lifetime among ledgers and proof knew the truth is proven by fractures, not speeches. 2 days later, I got a text from a contact in finance. Vanessa Moore is seeking emergency funds from a lender named Dominic Vega, previously tied to a money laundering case in Florida. I read the line and knew everything was unfolding as predicted. When someone is desperate for cash, they'll knock on any door even if there's a cliff behind it. Vanessa had opened that door. I called Derek immediately. "Derek, I need 2 things. 1. Check Dominic Vega's accounts, especially incoming funds from Moore Lifestyle LLC. 2. Forward all evidence of Vanessa's financial fraud to the Financial Crimes Unit." He got it right away. "You filing a formal complaint?" "Not yet. I just want them watching the flow. When a fish starts thrashing, the water gets murky. I want them to see it before I move." For the next 3 days, I barely left the house. I tracked every ripple from my desk. Vanessa's accounts flagged, linked companies cutting ties. A few vendors even posted publicly that they'd been misled by a fake guarantee. Vanessa reacted like a cornered animal. She emailed me, words dripping with fury. "What are you trying to prove? That you're smarter? You're just a lonely old man stuck in the past, jealous of young people with power you don't have anymore." I read it all and deleted it. No reply. I didn't need to prove I was smart. I just needed the truth to speak. That afternoon, Derek called back, his voice rough but charged. "Leo, I just got word. The investigators opened a file. They found flows from Moore Lifestyle LLC through 3 middle accounts into Dominic Vega, totaling over $80,000 in 2 weeks. I smiled faintly. So she basically signed her own indictment. Right. And the police are looking into suspected fraud and money laundering. I nodded and looked out the window. Dusk was settling in, the last light throwing streaks of orange across the table. The room was quiet, just the clock ticking steadily like a countdown to the moment justice speaks. That night, the phone rang again. It was Vanessa. Her voice wasn't angry anymore, it shook, tangled up with fear and desperation. "Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry. Maybe I went too far. But you have to help me. They're investigating me. Do you understand?" "I'm going to lose everything," I said softly. "Listen, no one loses everything because of someone else unless they've sold themselves first. I just wanted a better life. I just wanted respect. You were poor once, you know what that feels like." I went quiet for a few seconds. Yes, I know what being poor feels like, but I never used it to excuse a lie. Vanessa, I said slowly, respect isn't something you buy with money. It's the interest paid on decency. And you've never invested in that. I heard a choked sob. Then, silence. The call ended. I saved the recording again. Not to hurt her, but because a father reclaiming his honor needs protection. The next morning, Derek sent a final email. The police are officially involved. All accounts tied to More Lifestyle LLC are frozen. Dominic Vega is being summoned. They'll need you as a witness if this goes to court. I finished reading and leaned back, eyes closed. In the darkness behind my eyelids, I saw Linda's gentle smile. A voice light as air. Don't let resentment blur the truth. I opened my eyes and looked up at her photo on the wall where the morning light had just hit, making the frame glow like it was breathing. Don't worry, I said. I don't hate anyone. I'm just doing what's right. I stood, poured myself more coffee, and with a rough but steady voice said to myself, or maybe to Linda, maybe to life. They think I'm just a doddering old man, but they forget I once audited this entire city. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, a soft murmur like agreement. And I knew the dominoes hadn't stopped yet, but this time, each one falling tilted toward the truth. That afternoon, Atlanta wore a quiet gray. Spring winds carried the last chill of winter, rattling the porch door. I was making coffee when I heard a car brake hard out front. The door flew open. Eric walked in pale, hair a mess, eyes red. His shirt was wrinkled, tie crooked. Before I could speak, he tossed his phone on the table and choked out, "Dad, they're threatening to sue me. The police say my account is tied to Vanessa's company." I didn't do anything. I just signed a few papers, she said, were media forms. I looked at my son and my chest tightened. That posture, desperate and lost, was the same as when he was 10 and cried after breaking the model train I gave him. Only now, the crack couldn't be fixed with glue or apologies. I said nothing, opened a drawer, pulled out a file and set it in front of him. "Read." He looked at me, fear in his eyes. "What is it, Dad?" "Proof. Every account Vanessa used to move money, including the last withdrawal, exactly 2 days before the investigation." Eric's hands shook as he turned the pages. Each sheet was a cut across his illusions. Statements showing transfers totaling more than $150,000, all from their joint accounts to More Lifestyle LLC. He went quiet, eyes stuck on the final number, $47,000, with a note. "Prepayment, consultant fee." "She took it all?" he rasped, barely above a whisper. I nodded. "Everything, even the savings she opened under your name, it's closed." Eric bowed his head to the table. I heard his heavy breaths, his fists clench. "I'm so stupid. I believed her. I thought if you love someone enough, they won't betray you." I didn't answer right away. I let him sit there and face the hole he dug with blind faith. In that moment, I felt no anger anymore, only a grief so full it went quiet. "Son," I said gently, "I tried to warn you. At the engagement party, I told Vanessa's mother her daughter seemed too focused on image and money. She laughed and called me tactless. Vanessa smiled too, and that smile chilled me." Eric looked up, eyes bloodshot. "You knew and still let me marry her?" "Could I have stopped you?" I asked, calm. "People in love don't listen. All I could do was let you see for yourself. And now you have." He gripped his hair, head down. "She said she loved me, Dad. Said we'd build a new life. It was all a lie." "Not exactly," I exhaled, meeting his eyes. "She did want to build a new life, just not with you in it." He let out a broken laugh, dry, misshapen, the sound of someone who just lost the last thing he believed in. I stood, poured him a glass of water, and sat beside him. "You once said you wanted to learn investing, remember? Here's lesson 1 and the most expensive. Never invest in someone who isn't sincere. With money, or with your heart." Eric stayed still, hands trembling. A tear fell onto Vanessa's signature on the page. He murmured, like a confession, "I thought you were jealous of her. I said awful things to you. I'm sorry." I set my hand on his shoulder and said nothing. Apologies don't rewind time, but sometimes they're the first step toward waking up. After a long while, Eric looked up, voice small. "What do I do now, Dad? The police are investigating. I don't want to go to jail for someone else's mess." I leaned over and pulled another envelope from the stack. "These are copies of every transaction. I've already sent them to Derek. You'll be fine. They can see you were just signing what you were told and didn't benefit." "Dad, when did you do all this?" I looked at him and smiled faintly. "The day you told me I didn't match the color palette of your wedding. Seems the lighting wasn't right, so I adjusted it." Eric stared at me for a long time, then suddenly cried. For the first time in years, he cried like a child. I let him. Sometimes tears are the only way to rinse off the dust of illusions. After a while, he wiped his face, voice shaking. "I've lost everything, Dad. She's gone, the money's gone, my reputation's wrecked. It's all over the news, friends are disappearing. I've got nothing." I squeezed his shoulder gently. "You still have the most important thing. Me." He looked up, eyes wet, like he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. "After everything, you don't hate me?" "Hate?" I shook my head. "No, son. Parents don't hate their children, they get disappointed. And disappointment comes from love. Now the only thing I want is for us to start over." He nodded, hiccuping. I stood, went to the cabinet, and took out an old bottle of wine. Linda had saved it for Eric's college graduation. We never opened it. I poured 2 glasses and slid one to him. "Drink, not to forget, but to remember. To remember there are mistakes you can't undo, but you can still save what matters." We sat across from each other in silence. Leaves rustled outside the porch. Inside, the wine warmed its way down and left just enough bitterness behind. I looked at my son's tired face, but the arrogance gone. In his eyes, I could see a trace of the boy who once said, "My dad's my hero." Quietly, firmly, I said, "From here on out we start again, not with money, but with honor." Eric didn't answer. He bowed his head, tears falling onto the wooden table, mixing with a few drops of spilled wine. I rested my hand on his shoulder, giving a light squeeze. In that moment, I knew the fight wasn't over, but I'd reclaimed the one thing money can't buy: my son. Outside, the last light of sunset slipped through the window onto Linda's frame. She was smiling in the photo, soft, like she was watching us finally find each other after years of being lost. In the days that followed, my house settled back into quiet, the kind that comes after a storm, when everything's still damp and smells like wet wood. But inside me, another wind was rising. It was time to finish this. I'd been patient long enough. No more room for hesitation. That morning, I sat at my desk and organized everything. Forged contracts, transfer statements, Vanessa's threats on tape, and the video of her bragging about the foolish old man. Each packet numbered and stacked bricks for the last wall of justice. I opened my computer and wrote an email to the Atlanta Police Department Financial Crimes Unit. Short subject line: fraud and forged signature report, Vanessa Moore. I attached every piece of evidence and added this statement: I, Leonard Hayes, 72, am the named financial guarantor whose signature was forged. I submit all evidence for investigation. I don't seek punishment, I seek recognition of the truth. I reread it and hit send. Once it was gone, I leaned back and breathed slow. A long road had reached its final stretch, and I felt no anger, just light, like a stone finally lifted off my chest after months. That afternoon, I called Eric. "Son, come with me tonight." "Where, Dad?" "The cafe by City Hall. The place where you and Vanessa had your first date." He looked surprised. "You want to meet her? After everything?" "Not to talk. To listen." He didn't understand, but he nodded. That evening we went to the small cafe on Peachtree, what Vanessa once called the place of love memories. I chose a corner table with my back to the window, the seat across from me empty. In my coat pocket, a tiny recorder was already on, battery full, indicator light off. No one would notice. I told Eric to sit at the next table and pretend to read. Just stay quiet, watch, and let her speak. Right at 7 p.m. Vanessa walked in. She was still put together, but her face was tired, eyes ringed. The light caught her earrings, the last bit of shine she had. She sat across from me, arms folded. Why did you ask me here? If it's to humiliate me, save it. I'm busy dealing with tabloid trash. I kept my tone even. No, I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I want to hear you. Because I don't think you were honest at any point. Vanessa gave a small, dry laugh. Honest? Were you ever honest with me? You hated me from the start. You decided I was here for money. What was I supposed to do if that's all you ever thought? I looked straight at her. You're wrong. I don't hate you for wanting money. I hate that you treated trust like something you can bargain for. She flinched, then looked away and spoke in a low voice, like she was letting out something stuck in her throat. I just needed the money to start my business. Nobody died. The line fell into the quiet, caught cleanly by the recorder under my sleeve. Every word, every syllable enough to button up the whole case. I didn't react. I just smiled, stood, and said softly, "Thank you. I think we're done." She stared at me, confused. "What are you pulling now?" "Nothing," I said. "Just turning the lights on one more time." I walked out, leaving her under the cafe's warm yellow lights, the same place where she used to boast about a brilliant future. That night, back home, I plugged in the recorder and pulled the audio. Her voice filled my study, clear as if she were standing right there. I just needed the money to start my business. Nobody died. I trimmed the excess, leveled the sound, and sent it to Derek. Subject: supplemental evidence. Send to police tonight. 10 minutes later he called, voice low but firm. "Leo, that's the final arrow. Tomorrow they'll move." The next morning Eric and I were asked to come in as witnesses. As we walked into the station, he squeezed my hand. For the first time in months, it wasn't fear, it was resolve. 2 hours later, the city knew. Headlines everywhere. Social media: bride arrested before wedding, accused of financial fraud and forgery. I read it on my phone without joy, without relief. Just a hollow feeling, like watching a candle burn through the last of its wax. Eric sat beside me, head down. He said nothing as he quietly signed the annulment in front of the officer. Each stroke trembled, but it was firm. When he finished, he looked at me with red eyes. "Dad, I don't know whether to thank you or apologize." I rested a hand on his shoulder. "Neither. Just understand this truth is worth more than any dream painted with lies." That afternoon, I went home and turned on the radio. The evening news recapped. Vanessa Moore, 32, a social media figure, was arrested for fraud and forgery tied to a lavish wedding. Police say the case was exposed thanks to a straightforward report by 72-year-old Leonard Hayes. I switched it off and sat by the window. Sunset light poured across the room and over Linda's photo. In that glow, her face looked softer, warmer, like she was watching me with grace. I whispered, almost under my breath, "Linda, justice doesn't give back love, only the truth." Maybe that's exactly what our son needed to start over. Outside, the old oak moved in a light breeze. Birds settled for the evening somewhere in the distance. I closed my eyes, breathed deep, and for the first time in years, felt a real peace, the kind that doesn't come from winning, but from putting everything back where it belongs. I never thought I'd be in a courtroom again after more than 40 years retired, but that morning, before the sun cleared the red brick roofs of downtown Atlanta, I was in the third row of courtroom 6. No more clacking keyboards, no more ledgers stacked to my shoulders. Just an old man with gray hair, holding a paper coffee cup, waiting for his name to be called. Vanessa walked in with 2 officers. White blouse, black slacks, hair tied back, almost no makeup. Still, I recognized the look that once made people believe her, the look of someone used to pulling strings. When her eyes met mine, she pressed her lips together and turned away. Eric sat beside me, fingers laced, head down. I could hear his thin, broken breaths. Since all this began, he talked less than he listened, like he was relearning how to stand after a hard fall. The judge, a middle-aged man with a gravelly voice earned from years on the bench, entered. State of Georgia versus Vanessa Moore on counts of fraud and forgery court is in session. Everyone stood. I did too. Instead of watching the judge, I looked at Eric. He gave a small nod, as if to say, "I'm ready to face this." At the defense table, Vanessa's lawyer spoke first. "Your Honor, my client was set up. All evidence was collected illegally through hidden cameras and recording devices without a warrant." Vanessa lifted her head and declared, "I never forged his signature. He wants to destroy me because he never accepted me. He fabricated everything." I sat still. The accusations rolled over me like ripples on a pond not strong enough to stir anything. I've heard too many excuses in my life from people greedy for money, power, or just the feeling of being right. The prosecutor stepped up, set 3 small USB drives on the table, and said, "We'd like to present our evidence." A technician brought up the big screen in the middle of the room. First was the video from the camera hidden in the crystal vase. Vanessa appeared, sipping wine, telling a friend, "I just need to get married and cash out. He won't live much longer." The audio was chillingly clear. The courtroom went dead quiet. A few people in the gallery let out soft sighs. Vanessa's face drained as she turned to her attorney. I was just joking." The prosecutor didn't answer, only signaled the technician to play the second recording, the one from the cafe. "I just needed the money to start my business. Nobody died." Again, silence. The wall clock's second hand sounded loud and sharp. Eric bowed his head, his shoulders trembling. I gently set my hand over his. He squeezed back, gripping me hard, saying nothing. The prosecutor went on with bank statements, verified genuine versus forged signatures, and records showing the withdrawals. "Your Honor, this is the full transaction chain clearly demonstrating fraud and forgery. Every document has been cross-checked and confirmed by the Bank of Georgia." The defense tried to push back, claiming Mr. Hayes has personal motives and that the recordings were illegal. But the prosecutor just smiled and said evenly, "No warrant is needed when the evidence is provided by the direct victim." That line landed like the final move. Vanessa began to unravel. "You don't understand. I just wanted a chance. Who doesn't want a better life? He has millions and just sits alone in that old house." The judge rapped the gavel, stern. "Order." Vanessa kept shouting, "He destroyed me out of pride. I deserve love. I'm not a criminal." The prosecutor answered with one sentence, "Innocent people don't forge other people's signatures." The room sank back into silence. The judge glanced through the file, read a few lines quickly, then spoke slowly. "Defendant Vanessa Moore, the court sentences you to a 5-year suspended sentence, with restitution in full to the plaintiff, Leonard Hayes. However, in light of the defendant's cooperation and truthful statements, the court allows community supervision." Vanessa collapsed into her chair. Her face was pale, her hands clenched so tight her nails pressed into her skin. As for me, I just sat quietly. When the judge asked, "Mr. Hayes, would you like to make a statement?" I stood, voice low and clear. "Your Honor, I don't need the money. I want my son to wake up to understand that trust can't be built on lies. I believe in the law, and I believe in what's right." The courtroom was motionless. I could hear pens scratching paper, the wind slipping through a door seam. Eric still kept his head down, tears falling onto the wooden table. Then he turned to me and whispered, voice shaking, "I'm sorry, Dad. Just 4 words, but I'd waited years to hear them. I said nothing, just squeezed his hand, light but firm. In that grip was forgiveness and a new beginning. A few days later, the local papers ran with it. Elder accountant teaches a lesson in honesty. They talked about me as a symbol of justice and clarity in old age, but I didn't feel like a hero. I was just a father tired of lies who chose to put a stop to them. That afternoon, after reading the piece, I folded the Atlanta Daily, set it on the table, and went into the kitchen. The sky was crystal clear. Sunlight streamed through the window onto the old dining table. The lavender tablecloth Linda once embroidered was still there, a little faded but clean. I wiped each corner of the table, set out the dishes we'd packed away for more than 10 years. The clink of china sounded like beats of memory. I placed 2 glasses side by side, one for me, one for Linda, even though she was gone. Sitting down, I folded my hands, closed my eyes, and said softly, "Do you see, Linda? In the end, the truth won. I don't need praise. I just need our son to bow his head when he's wrong and hold it high when he does what's right." A breeze came through the window, carrying the scent of lavender from the yard. I could almost hear her laugh light as breath. I opened my eyes and smiled. 2 places set at the table, one for the one who's gone, one for the one who's come back. And for the first time in years, the house didn't feel cold anymore. That summer came early. Atlanta was bright with sun, warm but not harsh. I opened the window. The breeze carried fresh-cut grass and the sounds of kids playing down the block. The house that had been quiet for so many years began to sound lived in again. Eric moved back in. No fanfare, no announcement. Just one morning, a moving truck stopped out front and I heard his voice, soft. "Dad, could I stay here for a while?" I looked at him, thinner face, eyes no longer proud but humble, like someone who'd walked through a storm. "This house always has a place for you," I said. From that day, the small house on the oak-lined street had 2 men again, one old, one middle-aged, learning how to start over. Eric found a modest job at a local accounting firm through an old friend of mine. It wasn't big, the pay wasn't high, but he took it. Every morning he left at 7 a.m., wearing one of my old dress shirts and a pair of shoes I'd polished up. In the evenings he read my old accounting notebooks, taking careful notes like a beginner. Sometimes I'd pass by and see him bent over under the desk lamp, and I'd feel something strange, tenderness, pride, and regret for lost time. "Remember," I told him one evening, "accounting isn't just numbers, it's recording other people's trust. Every number has a soul if you know how to see it." He smiled and nodded. "Dad, I get it now. I used to think money showed your worth. Turns out real worth comes from keeping your self-respect." I was quiet for a moment, then set my rough hand on his shoulder. "And I learned that sometimes you have to let your child fall to learn how to stand." We both laughed, light as a breeze. It had been a long time since I saw peace in my son's eyes, no swagger, no regret, just true maturity. On weekends, we fixed up the house together. I showed him how to replace broken shingles, repaint the porch, and he took over the yard. We replanted Linda's lavender beds. The scent drifted through the yard, and I felt like she was still somewhere nearby, smiling at the 2 of us. Once, Eric paused, looking at the pale purple row of flowers, and said quietly, "Dad, I never said this, but Mom's the person I respect most. She lived simply, never chased status. I think that's why she was always happy." I nodded, my voice dropping. "Your mother understood what young people forget. Happiness doesn't need an audience." We fell silent. The breeze carried the floral scent through our fingers and across the gray, now silvering hair at my son's temples. I looked at him, stronger shoulders now. He wasn't that reckless kid chasing fake lights anymore. One evening in early August at dusk, I asked Eric to reset the old dining table. He wiped every corner carefully, set the dishes, then lit a small candle in the center. Dinner was simple pot roast and mashed potatoes, just like Linda used to make. No big talk. Just warm candlelight, the soft clink of flatware, and the feeling of two people who'd lost each other finding simple peace again. Mid-meal, Eric looked at me, voice steady and sincere. "Dad, I know I hurt you. I don't expect instant forgiveness, but I want to say I'm grateful you never turned your back on me." I set my fork down and smiled. "Eric, forgiveness isn't forgetting. Forgiveness is understanding you've hurt enough to learn the right thing, and the only right thing is to never trade trust for flash." He lowered his head, eyes wet but not with weakness. Those were tears of recognition. After dinner, we sat on the porch, watching streetlights glow over the quiet block. Far off, a few kids rode bikes, their laughter mixing with crickets in the grass. Eric asked, "Dad, do you ever feel like happiness came late?" I thought a bit, then answered, "No, because happiness, even late, is still happiness. What matters is being patient enough to wait." He nodded with a gentle smile, the light catching his face so I could see traces of Linda, her eyes, her nose, even that smile. I turned away, hiding a long but easy exhale. For years I thought old age meant only quiet seasons. But sitting beside my son in a house full of memories and once quiet halls, I realized peace has its own voice, soft, but it carries. When the clock struck 8, I stood to clear the dishes. Eric called after me, "Let me, Dad. I want to learn how to live slow like you." I chuckled and shook my head. "You don't have to learn it. Just live honestly and you'll slow down on your own." He smiled, took the plates to the kitchen, and I looked around the room, the candle still burning, its glow reflecting off the wedding photo of Linda and me on the shelf. She was still smiling, like she'd never left. I said softly, just loud enough for the breeze to hear, "Sweetheart, I think we did it. Our son came home." Then I turned to Eric, warm and steady. "Come on, son. After dinner, let's plan for the morning. The lavender needs fresh soil, and we'll plant some roses too for your mom." He nodded, eyes bright in the lamplight. Outside, an Atlanta night sat quiet, without the old noise. In the little wooden house, father and son sat together, no promises, no money, just the warm light of a candle and the warmth of a bond brought back to life after too many cold years. A year later, Atlanta welcomed spring with light rain and early peach blossoms on Peachtree Street. I sat on the porch, looking over the lavender and the new rose bushes. Pink against purple made the garden feel alive, warm, and gentle, like Linda when she knit scarves in the season's first sun. The house wasn't silent anymore. Eric was prepping materials for a community class. My old office was now a small classroom where he taught retirees how to avoid financial scams and manage money safely. I still remember when he told me, "Dad, I can't erase what I did, but I can stop someone else from repeating my mistakes." From then on, Eric changed completely. No fancy cars, no pricey parties, no fake shine. He lived simply, saved, ate toast and black coffee, and drove my old car to work. At night, he taught seniors for free at the local church how to spot the slick tricks. Looking at him now, I didn't see a man chasing other people's approval anymore. I saw someone grown who bows when he's wrong and stands tall when he's right. That March, I got a surprise invitation from the Georgia Department of Community Services to speak at a forum on seniors and financial fraud, with hundreds of seniors, experts, and volunteers. I planned to decline. I don't like stages or telling my life story. But Eric said, "You should go, Dad. Not to accuse anyone so people know someone will still say no to injustice, even in old age." I thought on it all night. The next morning, I agreed. The forum was held in a big oak-floored hall at the city community center. When I stepped to the podium, the room quieted. In the back row, I saw Eric sitting still, gripping his notes. I took a breath, looked around, and began, "Hello, everyone. My name is Leonard Hayes. I used to be an accountant. Over 40 years, I audited hundreds of companies and uncovered dozens of frauds. But there's one I almost missed, the one that happened inside my own family. You could hear a pin drop. I told the story plainly, no names, no blame, just the signs of financial manipulation and how seniors are exploited when they only want to believe their loved ones. Some people don't need to rob banks to steal money, I said, steady and low. All they need is a signature, a smile, and a promise wrapped in, "I just want what's best for you." Some in the audience bowed their heads, others wiped tears. I went on, slow but sure. I used to think love could fix any mistake, but love without boundaries is the shortest road to being hurt. When you let someone control your finances, you're handing them the right to decide your honor. I paused and looked down. In the middle rows, Eric lifted his head. His eyes met mine not as a son under judgment, but as a man who finally understood. I smiled and closed with, "I don't do accounting anymore, but I still believe in numbers. And all my life I've learned one thing. No number is more valuable than the word respect." The room rose to its feet. I bowed, not looking around, only toward the right corner where Eric quietly wiped his eyes. That afternoon we drove to the suburbs where Linda rests. The path into the cemetery was fresh green. I carried a bouquet of purple tulips, her favorite. We stopped at the old headstone. Linda Hayes, 1953, 2020. Wife, mother, faithful friend. I set the flowers down, straightened the small photo on the stone, and said quietly, "See, Linda, everything's at peace now. Our Eric has learned to stand on his own." Eric stood beside me, eyes wet. He lowered a hand to my shoulder and said, voice tight, "Dad, I wish Mom were here to see I'm not a fool anymore." I looked out where the spring wind moved through the trees, carrying damp earth and flowers. I answered, gentle but firm, "She sees it all. She's still here, just in a different way. And me, I didn't teach you with a belt, I taught you with consequences." Eric laughed softly through tears and nodded. "And I've learned that lesson, Dad." We stood a long time. The breeze was so soft it only stirred the tulip petals. Far off, church bells rang, falling over the grass like Linda's whisper, blending with the heartbeat of the world. I closed my eyes and felt warmth spread in my chest, not from the sun but from our family reborn. After the breaks, the betrayals, the tears, I knew spring had truly returned. Time has its own way of mending what seems impossible. 3 years have passed since the trial ended. Everything is different now, no noise, no drama, just small rhythms that feel complete. Vanessa was released early for good behavior. I heard from the news, then saw her online in an ad, now a personal image development coach. She still speaks smoothly, still wears that smile that once convinced so many. But this time, no one buys it. Every video's comments reach back to the past, to the social media bride arrested right before her wedding. I don't feel satisfaction. Honestly, I feel pity. A life built to polish an image, forgetting that honor can't be made up with makeup. Eric, my son, is different. A year after my speech, he bought back my old house, the one he grew up in, and turned it into the Hayes Center for Community Finance. Inside, cream walls, wide windows, round wooden tables. On the wall hangs a sign I wrote by hand. "Don't let anyone manage your money if they don't respect you." Each week, Eric teaches 2 classes for seniors on financial skills and spotting fraud. I sat in on the first one, quiet in the back row. When he stepped up, white shirt, black rimmed glasses, steady voice, I felt like I was watching myself at 30, only more patient, more grounded. Now my son doesn't talk about getting rich. He talks about self-respect and responsibility. And I knew the old lesson had taken root, gently, but for good. As for me, I chose to slow down. Mornings, I make coffee, read the paper, water the porch plants. Linda's lavender still blooms, and the roses Eric planted now climb the fence. Sometimes the neighborhood kids come over to hear stories. Their favorite is the old man who caught a crook with just a vase. I laugh and say, it wasn't the vase that caught anyone. It was the truth. If you're patient enough, it finds its way to the light. They laugh and run back outside. I watch them, feeling light. At this age, you don't need big things, just the peace you had to travel far to find again. I spent almost a year writing a small book, just over 100 pages, called The Numbers of Love Lessons in Truth and Self-Respect. It isn't a finance manual, it's notes from my life, people, mistakes, and the additions and subtractions of feeling. In the last chapter, I wrote, money can buy a wedding, but it can't buy loyalty. A contract can trade for a house, but it can't buy back lost respect. And a person is only truly rich when he keeps his promises to his own conscience. When I closed the manuscript, I felt calm. Maybe this is the gift I want to leave, not money, but a reminder. Live honestly, because truth never depreciates. That night, I sat on the porch under a spring sky. The moon was full and soft, silver light falling over the purple garden. The breeze nudged the leaves, the lavender swayed like whispering. I looked up and said gently, Linda, I taught him the right way. For a moment, I could hear her laugh. Not far away, but right beside me, light as air, warm as a lamp inside the house. Then the wall clock chimed 8 slow, even strikes. I closed my eyes, relaxed, and smiled. My journey had come to its end, not in bitterness but in peace. My story might remind you of someone, a father, a son, maybe yourself. I once lost faith and thought it was too late. But I learned, as long as you dare to love and hold to what's right, it's never too late to start over. If you also believe honor and self-respect can't be bought, leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I want to know how far this journey has traveled and whether someone out there needs this to find faith in people again. Thank you for spending time with an old man telling the truest things he knows. If you found a bit of pain, a bit of hope, or a bit of yourself in this story, please like, subscribe, and come along with me on this path. The path of decency, of awakening, and of family love that still holds its value, no matter how much time changes.